Some inventors changed the world. A few were accidentally defeated by it. Number 1. Franz Reichelt. Franz Reichelt dreamed of solving one of aviation's biggest problems. In the early 20th century, airplanes were becoming more common, but parachutes were still bulky and unreliable. Reichelt, an Austrian-born tailor living in Paris, believed he had the answer: a wearable parachute suit that pilots could carry at all times. After several unsuccessful tests using mannequins, he became convinced that real-world conditions would prove his design worked. In February of 1912, he received permission to conduct a demonstration from the first platform of the Eiffel Tower. Officials believed he would use a dummy. Instead, Reichelt shocked everyone by announcing he would jump himself. Spectators watched as he stepped from the platform nearly 200 feet above the ground. The parachute failed to deploy properly and he fell to his death. His final invention was intended to save lives, but it tragically claimed his own. Number 2. Thomas Midgley Jr. Thomas Midgley Jr. was one of the most influential inventors of the 20th century. He helped develop tetraethyl lead for gasoline and later played a major role in creating chlorofluorocarbons, chemicals once celebrated as revolutionary. But late in life, it was another invention that became tied to his fate. After contracting polio, Midgley lost much of his mobility. Determined to maintain independence, he designed an elaborate system of ropes, pulleys, and supports around his bed. The mechanism allowed him to lift and reposition himself without assistance. It was clever engineering from a man known for solving difficult problems. Yet in November of 1944, the system turned deadly. Midgley became entangled in the very ropes he had designed and was accidentally strangled. The tragedy carried a dark irony. An inventor famous for changing modern life was ultimately killed by a machine he built to make his own life easier. Number 3. Henry Winstanley. Henry Winstanley was an English engineer and inventor best known for constructing the first Eddystone lighthouse on dangerous rocks off the coast of England. The structure was considered a remarkable achievement because countless ships had been wrecked in the area. Winstanley took immense pride in his work and constantly improved the lighthouse, adding features that reflected both his engineering skill and his confidence. Over time, he became convinced that his design could withstand any storm nature could produce. In fact, he reportedly expressed a desire to be inside the lighthouse during the greatest storm imaginable so he could witness its strength firsthand. In November of 1703, that wish effectively came true. One of the most powerful storms in British history struck the coast. The lighthouse collapsed completely, and Winstanley, who was inside supervising repairs, perished along with everyone else there. His masterpiece survived many challenges, but not the one that ultimately took his life. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments. We're curious to see how far our videos travel around the world. Number 4. Marie Curie. Marie Curie did not die in a dramatic laboratory explosion or a single catastrophic accident. Her story is far more unsettling because it unfolded slowly over decades. As a pioneering physicist and chemist, Curie helped discover radium and polonium, opening an entirely new field of science. At the time, the dangers of radiation were poorly understood. Curie handled radioactive materials with her bare hands, carried glowing samples in her pockets, and stored them in desk drawers because she found their faint blue light fascinating. She spent years working in conditions that would horrify modern safety inspectors. The very discoveries that earned her 2 Nobel Prizes were gradually damaging her body. In 1934, she died from aplastic anemia, a disease linked to prolonged radiation exposure. Even today, many of her notebooks remain radioactive. Few inventors have left behind work so groundbreaking that it remains dangerous more than a century later. Number 5. Horace Lawson, Hunley. Horace Lawson. Hunley believed naval warfare could be transformed by underwater technology. During the American Civil War, he helped finance and develop one of history's first combat submarines. The vessel eventually became known as the H.L. Hunley and represented a bold leap into uncharted engineering territory. Early submarines were notoriously dangerous, operating with limited air, primitive controls, and countless unknown risks. Hunley remained deeply involved in testing and improving the craft. In October of 1863, after previous accidents had already claimed lives, he personally joined a training exercise aboard the submarine in Charleston Harbor. During the test, the vessel suddenly sank. Hunley and the entire crew drowned inside. The submarine was later recovered, repaired, and returned to service. It would eventually make history as the first submarine to sink an enemy warship, but its creator never lived to see that achievement. Number 6. William Bullock. William Bullock revolutionized the newspaper industry with one brilliant invention. His rotary printing press dramatically increased printing speed, allowing newspapers to be produced faster and more efficiently than ever before. In an era when information traveled slower than today, Bullock's machine helped transform mass communication. Newspapers across America quickly adopted his design, and his influence on publishing became enormous. Yet the machine that brought him success would also bring tragedy. In April of 1867, while installing one of his presses, Bullock attempted to make an adjustment by kicking a drive belt into position. His leg became caught in the machinery and was severely crushed. The injury quickly developed into gangrene, a life-threatening condition before modern antibiotics existed. Surgeons attempted to save him through amputation, but complications followed. Bullock died days later. The inventor who accelerated the spread of information became one of the earliest victims of industrial machinery. Number 7. Valerian Abakovsky. Valerian Abakovsky was a young Soviet inventor with an ambitious vision for transportation. During the 1920s, rail travel remained slow across much of the Soviet Union, and Abakovsky believed he had found a solution. He designed the Aerowagon, an experimental rail car powered by an aircraft engine and propeller mounted at the front. The concept was simple but daring. Combine the speed of aviation with the practicality of railroads. Early tests appeared promising, and officials became interested in its potential. In July of 1921, Abakovsky joined a demonstration trip carrying several passengers. The outward journey succeeded, creating excitement about the invention's future. But during the return trip, disaster struck. Traveling at high speed, the railcar derailed and crashed. Abakovsky was killed instantly along with several others. At just 25 years old, he became another inventor whose determination to prove his creation worked ended with the ultimate sacrifice. Number 8. Karl Sucek. Karl Sucek was an inventor, stunt performer, and professional risk-taker who constantly searched for new ways to survive impossible situations. His most famous creation was a specially designed barrel built to protect a person during extreme impacts. In 1984, Sucek gained international attention by successfully plunging over Niagara Falls inside one of his reinforced capsules and surviving. The achievement made him famous and convinced him that his invention could handle even more dramatic demonstrations. Seeking a larger audience, he arranged a stunt inside the Houston Astrodome the following year. Suspended high above the ground, Sucek planned to drop his barrel into a water tank below. Thousands watched as the capsule was released. Everything depended on perfect accuracy. Tragically, the barrel struck the edge of the tank instead of landing inside it. The impact was devastating. The invention that had already saved his life ultimately failed to save it again. Number 9. Jean-François Pilâtre de Rozier. Jean-François Pilâtre de Rozier was one of the earliest aviation pioneers, a man willing to leave the safety of the ground long before flight was considered practical. In the 1780s, hot air balloons were astonishing Europe, and Pilâtre became famous as one of the first humans ever to fly. But he wanted more than short demonstration flights. His greatest ambition was crossing the English Channel through the air, an achievement no one had accomplished. To do it, he designed an experimental balloon, combining hydrogen gas with a hot air system. On paper, the idea promised greater control and range. In reality, it combined two dangerous technologies into one fragile aircraft. In June of 1785, shortly after takeoff, the balloon malfunctioned and caught fire. Witnesses watched helplessly as it crashed to the ground. Pilâtre became the first recorded person in history to die in an aviation accident, sacrificed to the dream of human flight. Number 10. Alexander Bogdanov. Alexander Bogdanov was a physician, philosopher, scientist, and visionary who believed humanity could dramatically extend life through blood transfusions. During the 1920s, blood science remained relatively new, and Bogdanov became fascinated with the idea that younger blood might rejuvenate aging bodies. He founded one of the Soviet Union's first blood transfusion institutes and personally participated in numerous experiments. Some early results appeared encouraging, strengthening his confidence in the concept. Convinced he was on the verge of a medical breakthrough, Bogdanov continued testing the procedure on himself. In 1928, he received blood from a young student who unknowingly carried both malaria and tuberculosis. Medical screening techniques were primitive, and the transfusion introduced dangerous infections directly into Bogdanov's body. His health deteriorated rapidly, and he died soon afterward. The irony remains striking. A scientist seeking to lengthen human life lost his own while experimenting with the very treatment he hoped would conquer aging. Number 11. Otto Lilienthal. Decades before the Wright brothers changed history, Otto Lilienthal was already proving that controlled flight might be possible. The German engineer became famous for designing and building gliders inspired by years of studying birds. Unlike many dreamers of his era, Lilienthal did not merely write theories. He repeatedly launched himself from hills, carefully recording data from thousands of flights. His work influenced nearly every aviation pioneer who followed. Newspapers celebrated him as the flying man, and his confidence grew with every successful glide. Yet aviation remained unforgiving. In August of 1896, while flying one of his latest glider designs, Lilienthal encountered a sudden loss of control. The aircraft stalled and plunged to the ground from roughly 50 feet. He suffered a broken spine and died the following day. His final reported words were simple and haunting. Sacrifices must be made. Aviation advanced because pioneers like him paid the ultimate price. Number 12. Henry Smolinsky. Henry Smolinsky spent years chasing a dream that still fascinates people today: a true flying car. In the early 1970s, he co-founded Advanced Vehicle Engineers and began developing a machine called the AVE Mazar. The concept combined a standard automobile with aircraft components, allowing drivers to transition from roads to skies. Media attention quickly followed because the idea seemed pulled directly from science fiction. Smolinsky believed the future of transportation had arrived and was determined to prove it. Test flights generated excitement, but the technology remained experimental and complex. In September of 1973, Smolinsky personally participated in a demonstration flight of the prototype. During the flight, a critical structural connection failed, causing the aircraft section to separate from the vehicle. The craft immediately became uncontrollable and crashed. Smolinsky and his passenger were killed. The inventor who dreamed of merging cars and airplanes became another casualty of aviation's relentless risks. Number 13. Thomas Andrews. Thomas Andrews was not the owner of the Titanic, nor its captain, but few people understood the ship better. As the chief naval architect responsible for overseeing its design and construction, Andrews spent years helping create what was then one of the most advanced passenger liners ever built. The Titanic represented cutting-edge engineering, featuring innovative safety measures and luxurious accommodations that amazed the world. When the ship began its maiden voyage in April of 1912, Andrews joined the journey to observe performance and identify improvements. After the vessel struck an iceberg, he quickly inspected the damage and realized the situation was hopeless, long before most passengers understood the danger. Witnesses later recalled Andrews working tirelessly to encourage evacuations and help others reach lifeboats. He never attempted to save himself. When the Titanic disappeared beneath the Atlantic, Andrews went down with the ship he had helped create, becoming forever linked to history's most famous maritime disaster. Number 14. Max Valletier. Max Valletier was an Austrian engineer and one of the earliest visionaries to seriously promote rocket-powered transportation. Long before the space age began, Valletier imagined a future filled with rocket cars, rocket sleds, and eventually rocket aircraft. During the 1920s, he became one of Europe's most recognizable advocates for space travel, turning complex scientific ideas into public demonstrations that captured headlines. Rather than staying behind a desk, Valerian insisted on personally testing many of the technologies he championed. His experiments steadily grew more ambitious as he sought greater speed and power. In May of 1930, he was working on a liquid-fueled rocket engine, a major step beyond the simpler systems he had used before. During a test run in Berlin, the engine unexpectedly exploded beside him. Metal fragments struck him with fatal force. One of rocketry's earliest pioneers died while helping build the foundation for humanity's future in space. Number 15. Thomas Savery. Thomas Savery was an English inventor whose work helped lay the groundwork for the Industrial Revolution. During the late 17th century, flooded mines were a constant problem throughout Britain, and Savery believed steam power could provide a solution. He developed one of the earliest practical steam-powered pumping devices, a machine that represented a revolutionary concept for its era. Steam technology was still poorly understood, and inventors often pushed equipment beyond safe limits while exploring its potential. Savery became famous for demonstrating his machine to investors, engineers, and government officials eager to see the future of industry. According to historical accounts, one demonstration involved operating equipment under dangerously high pressure. The technology was primitive and steam boilers were notoriously unpredictable. Reports suggest that a violent boiler failure during testing contributed to the circumstances surrounding his death. His pioneering work advanced steam engineering, but the immense power he helped unleash remained one of history's most dangerous forces. Number 16. Stockton Rush. Stockton Rush dedicated much of his career to expanding private deep-sea exploration. As founder of OceanGate, he believed modern engineering could make visits to the ocean's greatest depths more accessible than ever before. His most ambitious creation was the Titan submersible, a vessel designed to carry passengers thousands of feet beneath the Atlantic Ocean to view the wreck of the Titanic. Rush often argued that innovation required accepting risks that traditional industries considered unacceptable. Critics, however, repeatedly raised concerns about the vessel's unconventional design and materials. Despite warnings from experienced engineers and industry specialists, Titan continued operating. In June of 2023, Rush personally joined an expedition descending toward the Titanic wreck site. During the dive, communication was suddenly lost. Investigators later concluded that the vessel suffered a catastrophic implosion under extreme ocean pressure. The entrepreneur who sought to redefine deep-sea exploration ultimately perished inside the machine he championed. Number 17. Henry Flosse. Henry Flosse was a remarkable inventor whose work transformed underwater exploration. During the 19th century, divers depended heavily on cumbersome surface-supplied air systems that restricted movement and limited what could be accomplished beneath the water. Flosse developed one of the first practical self-contained breathing apparatuses, an invention that allowed divers unprecedented freedom. His system used compressed oxygen and chemical filtration to recycle air, introducing concepts that influenced future diving technology. Determined to prove its effectiveness, Flosse frequently participated in demonstrations and real-world operations. His invention successfully completed tasks previously considered impossible, earning widespread attention among engineers and rescue workers. Yet early diving technology remained incredibly dangerous because scientists still knew little about oxygen toxicity and long-term physiological effects. Extended exposure during testing and demonstrations reportedly contributed to serious health complications. Flosse spent years exposing himself to risks few understood, making him another inventor whose body paid the price for technological progress beneath the surface. Number 18. Sabin Arnold von Sochacki. Sabin Arnold von Sochacki helped create one of the most fashionable products of the early 20th century: glow-in-the-dark paint. Working with radium-based compounds, he developed luminous materials that allowed watch dials and instrument panels to glow in darkness. The invention became enormously popular, particularly during an era fascinated by anything involving radioactivity. Radium was viewed almost as a miracle substance, appearing in cosmetics, medicines, and consumer products. Like many researchers of his generation, Sucek handled radioactive materials regularly and with little protection. The dangers remained poorly understood, even as alarming health problems began appearing among workers who painted luminous watch dials. Over time, prolonged exposure to radiation severely damaged Sucek's health. In 1928, he died from aplastic anemia caused by years of contact with radioactive substances. The tragedy carried profound irony. The inventor who helped make objects glow in the dark was ultimately destroyed by the invisible force powering his invention. Number 19. William Nelson. William Nelson was an inventor from Ohio who spent years trying to improve personal transportation during the late 19th century. At a time when bicycles were rapidly evolving and the automobile was still in its infancy, Nelson focused on creating a motorized bicycle that could travel faster and farther than anything currently available. His design combined the simplicity of a bicycle with the power of a small engine, making it one of the earliest ancestors of the modern motorcycle. Like many inventors of his era, Nelson believed the best way to test a machine was to ride it himself. In 1895, he took his latest prototype onto the road for a demonstration run. During the test, he lost control and crashed. The injuries proved fatal. History remembers him for helping pioneer motorized transportation, but tragically, one of the first motorcycle inventors also became one of its earliest fatal victims. Number 20. Sylvester H. Roper. Sylvester H. Roper was one of the most innovative American inventors of the 19th century and decades ahead of his time. Long before motorcycles became common, he built steam-powered bicycles capable of impressive speeds. His machines looked astonishingly modern compared to other vehicles of the era, blending engineering creativity with practical design. Roper constantly refined his inventions and remained personally involved in testing them well into old age. By the 1890s, he was already in his 70s, yet he continued writing and demonstrating his steam-powered creations before curious crowds. In June of 1896, while riding one of his latest machines on a racetrack near Boston, he suddenly collapsed. Witnesses watched as the motorcycle continued briefly before crashing. Medical examinations suggested he suffered a heart attack during the ride. The inventor died while operating the technology he had spent decades perfecting and promoting. Number 21. Charles Justin Caprone. Charles Justin Caprone was a respected American inventor and engineer whose fascination with military technology led him into dangerous territory. During the American Civil War, inventors raced to develop more effective weapons, believing innovation could change the course of battle. Caprone worked extensively with artillery-related designs and explosive technologies intended to improve battlefield effectiveness. Like many 19th century inventors, he often conducted hands-on experiments because laboratory safety standards were virtually non-existent. Testing explosives required standing dangerously close to devices that modern engineers would evaluate remotely. During one demonstration involving an experimental artillery shell, something went catastrophically wrong. The device detonated unexpectedly before proper precautions could be taken. Caprone suffered severe injuries and died as a result of the explosion. His death highlighted one of the harsh realities of 19th century invention. Progress often depended on individuals willing to place themselves directly in harm's way to prove their ideas worked. Number 22. Jean-Louis Naudin. Jean-Louis Naudin was a French inventor whose imagination constantly pushed him toward ambitious transportation projects. During the late 19th century, engineers across Europe were obsessed with finding faster ways to travel through the air. Balloons had already demonstrated human flight, but inventors dreamed of creating more controllable aircraft. Naudin became deeply involved in experimental aeronautics and designed several unusual flying machines. Like many aviation pioneers before the age of powered flight, he faced enormous technical challenges and very little reliable scientific guidance. Testing often involved climbing into fragile prototypes built from lightweight materials and hoping theory matched reality. During one experimental flight, mechanical problems caused his aircraft to lose stability. The craft crashed, fatally injuring Naudin. His story mirrors many early aviation tragedies. The sky promised extraordinary possibilities, but The inventors attempting to conquer it often paid with their lives before the technology finally matured. Number 23. Horace Lawson Hunley's crew inventors. The story of the Confederate submarine Hunley did not end with Horace Lawson Hunley's death. Several engineers and inventors continued modifying and improving the vessel after its earlier disasters, determined to prove that submarine warfare had a future. The craft represented one of the most advanced underwater machines of its era, yet it remained dangerously unpredictable. Every improvement required real-world testing beneath the water, where mistakes offered little chance of survival. Throughout its development, multiple crews and technical specialists died while attempting to solve design flaws involving buoyancy, air supply, and emergency recovery procedures. Some accidents occurred during routine demonstrations rather than combat missions. By the time the submarine finally succeeded in sinking an enemy ship, more than 20 men had already lost their lives connected to the project. Few inventions in history demanded such a staggering human cost before achieving their first successful mission. Number 24. Henry Wiggan. Henry Wiggan was a British engineer and inventor involved in the rapidly expanding world of industrial machinery during the 19th century. Factories were transforming society, and inventors competed to create larger, faster, and more powerful mechanical systems. Wiggan specialized in heavy equipment designed to improve manufacturing efficiency, a field where success often depended on constant experimentation. Unlike modern engineers surrounded by safety barriers and computerized monitoring systems, inventors of his era frequently worked directly beside moving machinery. During one inspection of an experimental industrial device, a mechanical failure occurred unexpectedly. The powerful machine malfunctioned while operating at full force, leaving little time to react. Wiggan suffered catastrophic injuries and died soon afterward. His death reflected a common reality of the Industrial Revolution. The machines that reshaped civilization were often built in environments where inventors themselves stood only inches away from tremendous mechanical forces, capable of turning innovation into tragedy within seconds. Number 25. Johannes Kepler's successor, Jost Bürgi. Jost Bürgi was one of the brilliant mathematical minds behind early scientific instruments that helped transform astronomy. Working during an era when precise measurements could mean the difference between discovery and failure, Bürgi developed advanced clocks and calculating methods that improved observational accuracy. While not as famous today as some of his contemporaries, his inventions influenced generations of scientists studying the heavens. Like many inventors of the 17th century, Bürgi spent countless hours around delicate mechanical systems powered by springs, weights, and experimental engineering concepts. Historical records suggest that years of exposure to hazardous materials used in instrument construction and maintenance contributed to declining health. Though not killed in a single dramatic accident, Bürgi represents a recurring pattern among early inventors. The tools they created expanded humanity's understanding of the universe, yet the constant risks involved in developing those technologies often shortened their own lives long before modern safety standards existed. Number 26. Jean-Eugène Robert-Houdin. Jean-Eugène Robert-Houdin is remembered today as the father of modern magic, but few people realize how much of his career depended on invention. Before becoming a legendary illusionist, he was a skilled watchmaker who designed intricate mechanical devices capable of astonishing audiences. Many of his famous stage performances relied on hidden engineering innovations that seemed impossible to 19th century spectators. His automated figures, mechanical tricks, and elaborate stage systems pushed technology far beyond typical entertainment. Throughout his career, Robert-Houdin constantly experimented with new mechanisms, often building and testing them personally. While he did not die from a single malfunctioning invention, years spent working with chemicals, metals, and demanding workshop conditions gradually affected his health. His story highlights another reality of invention rarely discussed. Sometimes the danger is not one spectacular accident, but decades of exposure to the materials and stresses required to create machines that appear effortless when viewed by an amazed audience. Number 27. Jean Hardouin-Robert. The late 19th century was filled with inventors determined to conquer the skies, and Jean Hardouin-Robert belonged to that ambitious group. Fascinated by the possibility of controlled flight, he spent years developing experimental aircraft at a time when aviation remained largely theoretical. Every successful test generated excitement, while every failure produced new lessons. Unfortunately, those lessons often came at tremendous cost. Early flying machines lacked reliable engines, aerodynamic knowledge remained limited, and safety systems were virtually non-existent. Inventors climbed aboard fragile structures made of wood, fabric, and wire, trusting calculations that had never been fully proven. During a demonstration involving one of his experimental designs, Hardouin-Robert suffered a catastrophic crash after losing control. The impact proved fatal. His death joined a long list of aviation tragedies that occurred before powered flight became practical. The dream of human flight eventually succeeded, but many of its earliest believers never lived long enough to witness victory. Number 28. William Brodie. William Brodie was an inventor and engineer fascinated by high-speed transportation during a period when railroads symbolized progress and national ambition. The 19th century saw fierce competition to build faster locomotives and more efficient railway systems, creating opportunities for innovators willing to challenge conventional designs. Brodie worked extensively with experimental railway technologies and mechanical improvements intended to increase performance. Testing these systems often required direct involvement because engineers trusted first-hand observation more than theoretical calculations. During one evaluation of new railway equipment, a mechanical failure occurred under operating conditions. The accident happened with devastating speed, leaving little opportunity for escape. Brodie suffered fatal injuries, becoming another inventor lost while attempting to improve transportation technology. His story reflects a common theme throughout industrial history. The machines that connected cities, accelerated commerce, and transformed daily life were frequently perfected by individuals willing to stand dangerously close to their own experimental creations. Number 29. Maximilian Selak's predecessor, Franz Křižík's testing era. Before electrical technology became routine, inventors working with high-voltage systems faced dangers that are difficult to imagine today. Franz Křižík, often called the Czech Edison, pioneered electrical innovations that transformed lighting and transportation. While Křižík himself survived his career, several engineers, assistants, and experimental collaborators involved in testing early electrical systems were not as fortunate. During the late 19th century, electricity remained mysterious, unpredictable, and poorly understood by the public. Safety protocols were still being invented alongside the technology itself. Demonstrations frequently involved exposed wiring, powerful currents, and equipment operating beyond proven limits. Accidents occasionally turned fatal within seconds. These tragedies underscored a harsh reality of the electrical age. The glowing streets, illuminated buildings, and electric transit systems that eventually changed modern civilization were developed through experiments where inventors and their teams routinely placed themselves in direct contact with forces capable of killing instantly. Their sacrifices helped electrify the world. Number 30. Thomas Andrews's fellow designer, Edward Wilding. Edward Wilding was one of the key naval architects involved in designing some of the largest ocean liners of the early 20th century. Working alongside other engineers at Harland and Wolff, he helped create vessels that represented the peak of maritime technology. These ships were engineering marvels, combining immense size with unprecedented luxury and complexity. Wilding dedicated years to solving structural challenges that had never existed before because ships kept growing larger and more ambitious. After the Titanic disaster, he became heavily involved in analyzing exactly what had gone wrong. His work influenced future safety improvements across the shipping industry. However, years spent under relentless professional pressure and demanding conditions took a toll on his health. Though not killed by a single dramatic accident, Wilding's life became inseparable from the technology he helped create. His story reflects how inventors sometimes become casualties of the enormous burdens attached to groundbreaking innovation itself. Number 31. Aurel Vlaicu. Aurel Vlaicu was a Romanian engineer and aviation pioneer who dreamed of pushing flight beyond its early limitations. During the years before World War I, aviation remained a dangerous frontier where every successful flight generated international headlines. Vlaicu designed several aircraft of his own, combining engineering skill with extraordinary personal courage. Unlike many inventors who relied on professional pilots, he insisted on flying his creations himself. His aircraft achieved impressive results and earned recognition across Europe, convincing many observers that he was among the most talented aviation innovators of his generation. In September of 1913, Vlaicu attempted an ambitious flight across the Carpathian Mountains. The journey promised to demonstrate both the reliability of his aircraft and the future potential of aviation. Instead, disaster struck mid-flight. His aircraft crashed, killing him instantly. The inventor who sought to prove the possibilities of flight became another martyr to aviation's unforgiving early years. Number 32. Ismail ibn Hamad Al-Jazari's legacy. Centuries before modern engineering existed, Al-Jazari created machines so advanced that historians still marvel at them today. Living during the 12th and 13th centuries, he designed automated devices, water-powered mechanisms, clocks, pumps, and programmable machines that were hundreds of years ahead of their time. While Al-Jazari himself did not die from one specific invention, many engineers who followed his principles throughout the medieval world worked in extremely hazardous conditions. Massive water systems, mechanical lifting devices, and experimental machines frequently failed with deadly consequences. Builders, inventors, and operators risked their lives testing technologies that had never existed before. Their stories are largely forgotten because medieval records often focused on rulers rather than engineers. Yet these early innovators faced dangers remarkably similar to later inventors. Long before airplanes, submarines, or rockets existed, inventors were already risking death while attempting to build machines capable of transforming civilization. Number 33. Louis Slotin. Louis Slotin was not inventing a machine in the traditional sense, but he was helping create one of the most powerful technologies in human history. As a physicist working on the Manhattan Project after World War II, Slotin conducted experiments involving plutonium cores used in nuclear weapons research. The work was extraordinarily dangerous because even a tiny mistake could unleash deadly radiation. Despite the risks, experienced scientists often relied on manual techniques that would never be permitted today. In May of 1946, Slotin performed a criticality experiment using two beryllium hemispheres around a plutonium core. The procedure depended on a simple screwdriver preventing disaster. When the screwdriver slipped, the core briefly went supercritical, releasing a massive burst of radiation. Slotin immediately realized what had happened and saved others by separating the materials. He absorbed the highest dose and died 9 days later. His final experiment became one of history's most infamous scientific tragedies. Which inventor took the biggest risk, genius or recklessness? Defend your choice below.